Hi, we're continuing our series called Teach Us to Pray. And last week we covered the first tool of the 5 tools we're going to be covering. The first one was adoration, and along with adoration comes thanksgiving. But today we're going to go into listening and contemplation. And this is anchored around that second phrase in the Lord's Prayer as Jesus teaches his disciples and us how to pray. Right? And this second line, it goes like this. Thy kingdom come, or your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You know, in our fast-paced and busy world, listening and contemplating is such a contrast. How often do we just sit down, without Instagram running or without TikTok in the background or without how often do we pause to just listen? Listening and contemplative prayer provides a refreshing and transformative way to connect with God on a deeper level. While prayers, all kinds of prayers often involve us speaking to God or asking God for things. Listening and contemplative prayer invites us to silence our minds, to open our hearts, to hear God's voice, to experience His presence. It's like, God, what is your kingdom like? What is your will like? It is in the stillness and quietness that we make space for God to speak, to reveal His truth, wisdom, and guidance to us. In your prayer toolkit, when you pray every day, do you use listening and contemplation? Do you have time to cultivate a deep understanding about God and His will? In this session, we'll discover the power and beauty of listening and contemplative prayers and how it can enrich our spiritual life and nurture our intimacy with God. I mean, if we're honest, I think most of our prayers are self-focused, right? I mean, you don't need to teach somebody. If nobody taught you how to pray, you'd still pray, Lord, help me. God, give me this. Help me with this. Right? The Lord's Prayer doesn't do that. It begins with adoration, right? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. But then it takes us to listening and contemplation where we're going, God, what is your kingdom? When can your kingdom come? Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It means we start with God's purposes, what's important to Him. We're paying attention, we're listening. What is His will in the situation? This model of prayer reminds us to put God's will and His interest ahead of our own. How do you know that you are not just a byproduct of media, of social influence, of trends, of things that your friends tell you? How do you know that you're not just a sum total of your own selfish desires? For every human being, that is so hard. So when we take time to listen and contemplate, we put deep attention to God, His kingdom, and His voice, it allows us as a Christian to step away from some of these secular influences in our life. John 10 verse 3 says, Jesus says, His sheep hears His voice. That is a mark of a real Christian, that we're able to hear God's voice. In contemplation, we seek to focus our minds fully on Jesus. It's less about doing for God, but it's more about being with God. Loving attentiveness to God is like intimate sharing with friends. Can I encourage you to explore that today?